Good morning. It's time for question and answer week. This question comes from Dan Wenner from Kalispell, Montana. And his question is, recently I saw Kelly on a YouTube video and I noticed that he has progressed from advocating completely weightless flies to tying beadhead nymphs and dumbbell eyes in his streamers. Why the change? Great question and very pertinent because for some reason I'm getting that question a lot lately. So I'm going to start with the nymphs, and I'm very short, very brief. I'm not a big beadhead fan. They have their place, but I don't believe they do what people think they do. One, I don't think if you're doing a hopper dropper style, they'll break the surface a little bit, and hang below it. And I think that's about where it ends. But just realize that nothing in nature, bugs don't drop vertically in the water column, and they don't swim up and then swim down, and they basically ascend for all practical purposes. And fish generally feed above their head. So the bead head theory, really, I don't advocate it. I like to weight the leader system and place the flies above that and make sure I know where they're at. And so the bead head to me isn't a big deal. I personally almost never beadhead my nymphs. And one thing to remember very quickly about the nymphs is if it's a really bright day, beadheads are fine. If you get a cloudy day, it behooves you to take the flash off your fly. Trash fish like whiteys, like shiny things, trout not so much. So away from the nymphs, goodbye. And then we're going to go into the streamer because I think that's what Dan was really asking me. So I'm going to give you a very brief history about streamers and why we weight or didn't weight. And the reason that I used to say I never weight my streamers was partly to make a point. And the point was, it seemed back in the day that anybody that tied a streamer, if you had a recipe, it started with put 5 pounds of lead on the hook and then start your fly. And just like with the nymphs, nothing drops vertically in your water column. No fly drops like that. A dead minnow does not drop vertically. And so the flies in the past that were heavily weighted had a tendency to drop like this. And what I would tell people is you get far more action out of a fly that's unweighted and make the line or the leader pull the fly down and it would flutter. And so you created action. And then so then we started doing dumbbell eyes, but they had a purpose. Well, first we started doing cone heads, and they had a purpose. Because if you took a fly, for example, this is a woolly sculpin, one of the first, bigger fly, this isn't a big one, but one of the first ones we used to tie, and they're very hard to get underwater just to break the surface tension, right? And so you simply put a cone head on it, and it would break the surface. But the real purpose on these flies is a lot to counteract some of the buoyancy that the flies actually have. I'll put dumbbell eyes and I'll put fish skulls or Roman Mauser heads on them, but it's mostly, if you take a fly, a bigger fly, it's mostly to counteract the buoyancy of all the other materials. They're still not weighted. They're not weighted like, I don't start the hook, the front hook, and let me back up a little bit there. Most flies that we're doing now are articulated, meaning they're 2 hooks, right? And so I don't start with 25 turns of 030 or something like that lead underneath that hook. I'm just putting these eyes on here. So I'm counteracting all this marabou and feather and body material and rubber legs. And for example, on a dungeon, you got a hair head. Well, that's pretty neutral buoyant, if not buoyant, and it floats. And so the eyes simply break the surface tension. At that point, if you fish this on a floating line, you're lucky if that fly goes that deep, right? And that wouldn't be a lot, really. I mean, you're just basically breaking the surface current and film and getting the fly underwater so your line will start to drag it. If you take a fly like this triple TNA, you could not get this fly underwater without a sinking line. And even this fly doesn't. This fly has 0 weight on it. All right, so we wanted that fly to swim real erratically, and it's basically designed completely to fish with a sinking line. And it takes a while. I still use, I'll put little tungsten beads in front of that sometimes because I can't break through the current. But you'll take this barely legal, and it's got, simply has a fish skull in front, and it's got 6 plumes, or actually it has 6 stacks of marabou. If you didn't have some sort of weight in the front, this fly would basically never get underwater. So the first 5 feet you retrieve, even with a sinking line, the fly would stay on top. So basically the heads are designed to pop the fly underwater, and they look cool too. I mean, that's part of it. They just look sexy that way. But basically this fly isn't going to drop. It's never going to drop vertically. It's going to drop head first if it does at all. But remember that fly is connected to your leader and your fly line. So the thought that the fly would drop like this is really not accurate because it's got to carry the line down and the leader down. So basically we're just getting the fly a little deeper. And the next part of it was that we started designing flies that weren't completely minnow, they weren't completely summer reactionary, just kind of crazy looking flies, but we wanted the fly to actually do something for a reason. We wanted the fly to go like on this Nancy P. This fly is designed to kind of jig, and the front of it again has a hair head, so buoyant, and we have to counteract that. So this brings the head down, and we want this fly to go up and down like this. So we had to have something in the front, but it's still not a really heavy fly. So I'm not really weighting the fly, I'm just kind of counteracting all the other materials. I'm compensating for all that buoyancy that the materials hold and getting the fly to break through the surface. But I still advocate weighting your fly with a purpose. Just don't start by just wrapping a whole bunch of lead on the hook and not thinking about the fly, how it's going to ride. These flies, like the Dungeon, that fly runs just like that. It's just enough weight in the front that the fly runs through the water column like that, you know, laterally through the water. It doesn't go sinking down at a rapid rate. So you have to build that into your fly. So to kind of wrap it up, I still don't really weight the flies. I weight the front for a purpose or to just simply break through the water column. But it's not about getting the fly deep. I don't care how much weight you put on a fly in one retrieve. You're not going to, you can weight that fly to where you can barely cast it. It's not going to sink the fly that far. And if you do weight one that hard, you're probably going to wear it in the head because they're really a pain to throw when they get that heavy. Hope that helps you out. Hey, Leia the Hula Girl reminded me that I forgot to tell you to send in your questions. If you've got a question and we use it, then you get a box of flies or a hat, and they're really fun and we really enjoy doing them, so please send them in. Thanks.